morning, everybody. Today's discussion on the Buddhist Learning Review is going to be on what is Myoho renge, which I believe is the third term that we're studying. Joe Eastburn can't be with us today because he's working on deadlines and he just can't do it. So we wish Joe well. And by the way, if anybody who's watching this video wants to be a part of this effort and join me in explaining these terms, gosh, I'd be more than happy to have you. Please contact me at my email address, garymmark@gmail.com. That's GARYMMARK@gmail.com. Okay, so what is Myoho renge? It's a moderate, this article is moderate in length, and I'm going to try to cover the essential points. So the first main point is that Nichiren identified the chanting of Myoho renge as the means to establish that kind of deep-seated, enduring, and genuine happiness. It is the title of the Lotus Sutra. In his writings and recorded oral teachings, Nichiren comments in detail and from various perspectives on the meaning of Myoho renge. First, it's important to note that it is the title of the Lotus Sutra, and the title of the Lotus Sutra in Sanskrit is Saddharma Pundarika Sutra. And then in the 4th century, the Chinese Buddhist scholar and translator Kumarajiva translated the entire Lotus Sutra from Sanskrit to Chinese. And in Chinese, the title of the Lotus Sutra is Miao Fa Lin Lian Hua Qing. And in Japanese, these Chinese characters are pronounced Myoho renge. I don't know if you guys know it or not, but Japan and China share the same kanji alphabet. Each language has multiple kanji alphabets, but the classical Chinese and the classical Japanese use the same characters. They're just pronounced differently. And they have the same meaning, but they're pronounced differently. It's very interesting. Anyway, Nichiren Daishonin says about Myoho renge that the phrase signifies something far beyond being simply the title of the Lotus Sutra. In particular, when adding nam in front of it, it means that, nam is a Sanskrit word. The Sanskrit word is namas. And in Japanese, it can be nam, which is a short version, or namu, which is the long version. And he says that dedication to the principle of eternal and unchanging truth, that's what nam means. And life indicates, when dedicated to this principle, our lives become based on wisdom that perceives the truth and function in response to any changing circumstance. So Nichiren also says that the nam, or the namu of Myoho renge is a Sanskrit word, while the rest of the characters are Chinese and they're pronounced in Japanese form. This means that this teaching is not just limited to China or Japan, but is actually something available for everyone on the entire planet. Another main point is that Nichiren Daishonin often says in the Gosho that he practiced exactly as the Lotus Sutra taught, or that he read the Lotus Sutra with his entire life. This is because the Lotus Sutra predicted that the person who propagates this will encounter harsh persecutions. And so he said that he realized a state of oneness with the essential truth of life. And he also said, quote, "The Buddha's will is the Lotus Sutra, but the soul of Nichiren is nothing other than Myoho renge." I think how this applies to us is that, we don't all necessarily get persecuted for practicing Buddhism. However, the negativity that comes up out of our life, or the obstacles that we encounter in our daily life, whether that is, depression or self-doubt, or maybe even thoughts of suicide, maybe even attempts at suicide. These are all come from our own slander of our own lives, and by extension the lives of others, and by implication, the Lotus Sutra itself. So we have to remember that Nichiren's teaching is a teaching of empowerment, and we empower ourselves by chanting the phrase Nam-myoho Renge Kyo over and over again to make that cause, that very deep cause. So, what is the meaning of Myoho Renge Kyo? In brief, Myo of Myoho means wonderful or mystic, and Ho means law, principle, teaching, or phenomena. Together, Myoho is translated as the wonderful law or mystic law. Nichiren Daishonin says, Myo stands for the Dharma nature or enlightenment, while Ho represents darkness or ignorance. Together, Myoho expresses the idea that ignorance and the Dharma nature are a single entity. This is a very profound pronouncement. Myoho then expresses the enlightened nature of a Buddha and the deluded nature of an ordinary person. In fact, they are essentially one, which is why we can, when we're feeling like crap, we can say, oh, that's part of being a Buddha. Sometimes it's like feeling like crap. And when we have self-doubt, we can realize that even though it's coming from our dark nature, it's not something necessarily to be rejected per se, but something that, it's kind of difficult to put into words. We can celebrate our ability to, choose the positive side of life, and without having to reject that part of ourselves that is negative. While most Buddhist schools see a huge difference between a Buddha and an ordinary person, Nichiren aimed to erase any idea of separation between the two. For instance, in the Heritage of the Ultimate Law of Life, he writes, Shakyamuni Buddha, and this is like one of the most important quotes from the Gosho, in my opinion. Shakyamuni Buddha, who attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago, the Lotus Sutra that leads all people to Buddhahood, and we ordinary human beings are in no way different or separate from one another. To chant Myoho Renge Kyo with this realization is to inherit the ultimate law of life and death. And I think this goes back to the principle of Ichinen Sansen that we discussed last week in connection with, or not last week, or the week before last, in connection with the 10 worlds. And that is that, that we need to really understand that it's all us, and there's no distinction between us and anything else, really, good or bad. And that we need to somehow manifest the ability to embrace it, however, at the same time, choose the most value-creative path. So that's Myoho. So we discussed Nam, dedicating one's life, and we discussed Myoho, the mystic law of life and death. As Nichiren further says that Myo represents death and Ho life. So Myo is a name given to the mystic nature of life, and Ho to its manifestations. So anyway, life and death, and mystic and manifest. Renge literally means lotus flower, which has a profound meaning in Nichiren Buddhism because the flower produces both flower and seeds at the same time. It illustrates the principle of the simultaneity of cause and effect. In other words, flower and seed, cause and effect, Nichiren says, are a single entity. Here, cause refers to the efforts or practice one carries out with the aim of becoming a Buddha, and effect to the actual attainment of Buddhahood. The simultaneity of cause and effect means that the very moment we chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo with the intention of improving our lives, the life condition of Buddhahood, imbued with courage, compassion, and wisdom, emerges within us. And I know I've often chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and wondered where that life condition of Buddhahood imbued with courage, compassion, and wisdom was, because even like sometimes while I'm chanting I can't find it or see it. But it is there, and it is manifest. I'm sure we've all had the experience, having a bad day where people are constantly, treating us, horribly, or being mean to us, or what have you, and we're wondering where the heck that's coming from. And by the same extension, we've had days where the world seems to be treating us very nicely, and wondering where that's coming from. Well, according to Nichiren Buddhism, that is our life. And so sometimes it's difficult to perceive all the dimensions of our life. However, based on our experience with this practice, we through time acquire the confidence that even though we can't see it necessarily all the time, or can't feel it necessarily all the time, while we're chanting that our act of chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is actually bringing that out. And we will see the effect with our mortal eyes at the appropriate times. Okay, so the final character, Kyo, Nichiren describes as the words and voices of all living beings. Kyo literally means teaching, and that the Buddha, and specifically that the Buddha expanded with his voice. Nichiren explains the voice carries out the work of the Buddha, and it is called Kyo. This means that our voices, when chanting or speaking to others about Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, resonate with and stimulate the Buddha nature within us, within others, and in our environment. And I believe by extension, even when we're just being nice to people or encouraging their lives, and not necessarily saying you need to chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to become happy, but just by being great examples of humanity to others through our behavior and our actions and our words, that we are doing the same thing. It's most important to remember that the phrase Nam-myoho Renge Kyo signifies dedicating our lives to the mystic law, acting upon that law as we work for our happiness and growth of that of others. Let's see, what else? What else can we say here? I really think that those are the essential points. There are many points in this article. I encourage you to read it for completeness. I'll end on this final note. Nichiren says that in chanting, faith, or the heart, our intent and determination is what is important. This is from the strategy of the Lotus Sutra. So it's very important for us to monitor our intent. What is our intent when we chant? What is our intent when we pray? So the article continues, when we chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo with firm conviction in our own limitless potential and that of others, with a determination to bring about our own happiness as well as the happiness of others, just as Nichiren taught, we will see clear proof of its power. And, again, I think sometimes for some of us it's very difficult to chant